Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. Does he agree with Infometrics that after the Canterbury rebuild peaks, the New Zealand economy will experience a hangover with slow income and GDP growth?
Honourable Bill
Mr.
English.
Speaker, I agree with Infometrics' short-term forecast, wage growth of 4% in the economy growing by over 11% in the next 3 years through to 2018, 180,000 more jobs over the next 5 years, export growth averaging 4% per year, private investment to remain elevated, and a declining current account deficit from 2016. However, I'm more optimistic than Infometrics about long-term growth for this simple reason. This government learned the lessons from the mistakes made by the previous Labor government, particularly in respect of runaway government spending when the economy was already growing. We are not going to increase spending by 50% in the next 5 years and put the export sector into recession. So we're likely to have more sustainable growth.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Does he now accept that unchecked residential housing speculation in Auckland and a narrowing of our export base shows that he's failed to rebalance the economy and is the cause of the weak growth that is forecast after rebuild peaks?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, no. On the contrary, I think the export sector has put in a very impressive performance, where even with a relatively high currency, in fact I think the highest 5-year average since the Second World War, they have continued to grow and be profitable, and New Zealanders have had the strongest Kiwi dollar that can buy more goods than it's been able to in a generation. So I simply don't agree with the member.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Does he agree that ongoing and increasing inequality in New Zealand, including the lowest home ownership rates in 50 years and income gaps widening between wealthy and poorer suburbs in Auckland, makes the economy unbalanced and out of whack, which means it doesn't perform as well as it could for everyone?
Honourable Bill English.
No. As the member will know, he's wrong about the facts. Income inequality in New Zealand is not increasing on any measure across the country. Income inequality is not increasing. And as for everyone benefiting from the economy, that's why the government had its $500 million families package in the budget. That as we have small surpluses, we want to make sure everyone can benefit from a stronger economy.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Well then, does he agree with the CEO of that far-left institution, Goldman Sachs, that increasing economic inequality destabilises society, or does he agree with Warren Buffett that inequality, which is rising around the world, including in New Zealand, is a drag on economic growth?
Honourable Bill
Mr.
English.
Speaker, Goldman Sachs aren't well known as experts on inequality, and certainly their comments may be applicable to the United States of America, but they're not applicable to New Zealand, where the regular statutory report set up by the previous government demonstrates that it's not the case. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. Income inequality is flat to slightly falling over the last 15 years.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Tim McIndoe.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, what steps is the government taking to lock in the gains for the long term from New Zealand's current growth?
Mr Speaker.
Point of order.
It's another of those questions which contains an erroneous and incorrect assertion that shouldn't be in a question according to standing orders.
Point of order.
I'll hear from Tim McIndoe.
Mr Speaker, my question is quite deliberately linked to the primary question and is simply asking what steps the government is taking. That is not an assertion, that is a question.
Speaking to the point of order, there's a loaded statement in the question about locking in gains.
Just before the member... Before the member takes this point of order, I was just trying to get silence from behind him so I could actually hear it. Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. If the question was as the member just recounted, that would be okay, but it wasn't. It included a loaded assertion which we disagree with plainly on the other side and shouldn't be in a question.
Order. This close to an election, I'm not surprised that there were issues of difference between two sides. I will listen to the question again. As I heard it the first time before it was interrupted, in my mind it was likely to be in order, but I'll hear it. Tim McIndoe.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. What steps is the government taking to lock in the gains for the long term? What steps is the government taking to lock in the gains for the long term from New Zealand's current growth?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Point of order.
Order. Order. I'll hear from Grant Robertson.
Mr. Speaker, I was waiting to see whether you ruled on whether or not that question was in order or not. It clearly includes assertions and statements that are not statements of fact. I'm also wondering why the member, Mr. McIndoe, said that it related directly to the primary question, which was specifically about Infometrics and their opinions, and I'm not sure that this supplementary is in order.
No, I need no further assistance. This is getting to the stage when it's getting a bit silly. The member, Mr. Grant Robertson, says it's not related to the primary question. When I consider where the question subsequently went to and the answers, there is no doubt this is a question about the economy in the future, and therefore it is in order in that regard. I don't think this is a question that is out of order in any way, and I invite the Honourable Bill English to answer it.
Mr. Speaker, plenty of steps, but I'm not surprised that 170,000 more jobs and higher incomes are irrelevant to the Labor Party when you compare it to moa hunting. Mr. Speaker, the government is focused on a further long-term investment in infrastructure. We'll continue with that program, with continuing to refine and grow our skills development process so more young people arrive at the labour market ready to work in the skilled jobs of the future, and also dealing with, for instance, the balance of environmental and economic opportunities in our agricultural sector through the freshwater framework. These are just a few of the steps we're taking to lock in gains, and I think they're more important than hunting mowers.
Order, order, order. Question number 5, Scott Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Justice and asks, what justice